each year, the DOE requires superintendents to sign a very long list of assurances of here's all the things that we promise we'll do if you give us the grant money, and here's the things we promise we won't do with the grant money, and all these strings that are attached. For ESSER 2, they're not just going under the general assurances, there has to be also the additional, here's what else you need to do. And for both of these, I need to be able to insert in the board meeting in which these were presented to the board and in which you agreed to allow me to sign the assurances. And for the general assurances, Charlie, you get to initial every page and sign with me. So those are, because, lucky guy. So essentially, it outlines all of the things that comply as applicable with the provisions of the Davis-Bacon Act, which is where we have to make sure that we're paying wages that are comparable and at rate. Initiate and complete the work within the applicable time frame after receipt of approval of the awarding agency. If we get approval for a particular project, we have to have that completed and all funds transactions have to be done before the grant expires or we don't get the funding. So it just spells everything out in 2 very long documents. So in a nutshell.
So, go ahead,
I
Tim.
just got a question. One of the assurances that I was reading, it might have been ESA 3, was there a requirement of a parent-involved committee?
That's for 3.
That
and
is
we're not
for
there
3.
yet. We were
Okay.
told that we will get specific numbers on that probably the end of May, the 24th or something like that. So at that point, generally, we get here's how much you get and here's all the paperwork that comes with it. So I'm guessing we're about a month out, we'll get to do this again for that one. And that one does require
So I guess similar to the treasurer vacancy, is that something that prior to the end of May that we want to start publicizing to say, hey, we're looking for a parent or 2 or a member of the community or business member to help us with this committee that we're going to have to form?
I think we could probably, I would say put it out right after vacation. Between now and
Yep.
vacation, it's
Yep.
probably not high on people's lists, but
No, I
thereafter
get
to
that.
be able
Yep.
to say,
Okay.
let's get that rolling. And be really nice to have a parent from each building level.
Mm-hmm.
So. can I
So
have a motion?
regarding these general assurances, does the board need to have a motion regarding them? Or-
I need a motion for both that you're going to, direct me to sign. I need to be able to say when that happened. For the ESSER 2, it's not in this part, but I have to put it in another part on the portal. For the general assurances, it has to be filled in on the last signature page along with everybody else.
So we need a motion to have Ruth Ellen sign the general assurances along with the chair, right?
Yes.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. Now, that is for ESSER.
And I need the same thing for ESSER 2 as well.
Okay, so that motion was for ESSER 1.
No, that was for the general
General
assurances for next year.
assurances.
That's for all the other grants.
Okay. So you need a motion to authorize you and myself to sign the general assurances for ESSER 2. Or the
Yes.
term-
So moved. Second.
Seconded by Josh.
And actually, you don't have to sign this one, Charlie, so you can vote on it if you'd like to.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Who were the motions on that one?
I
please?
made-
Joel,
And
and
Josh
then Tim, Josh seconded it.
Just beat me by a smidge. He snatched.
Lucky.
Thank you. I I kept my part short, Charlie.
Okay, next, we have Henry Wilson Memorial HVAC update.
You'll see in your folder, proposal from Siemens for HVAC for both the front office and the SAU office and Henry Wilson. This is to, basically what this is going to do is going to improve, not only improve the efficiency, but mostly improve the airflow. So it's going to be covered under ESSER 2. But what they're going to be doing is actually taking out the baseboard heating we have in there, not taking it out. They're going to be altering it so it's becoming a supplemental heating source versus the primary heating source. Because we have very little temperature control.
In the SAU?
In the SAU and the front office.
And the front office at Henry Wilson. So
The front
it's
office
in
is
that
in a different
building,
section of the building.
But it's at the
Right.
two office.
So what is going to be the primary heat source?
It's going to be a unit in the ceiling for each room.
So it's going to be electric.
I'm sorry?
How's it going to be? Is it going to be electric heat?
It's going to be, yeah, electric heat.
So it's going to be based upon a mini split? Or
Well, there's going to be some splits, and there's going to be some that are, if you actually
So-
look in,
Well, let me back up a little bit. How did this proposal come about?
because we don't have any circulation of air in that front office.
Okay,
So,
why was this, when was this asked for? I mean, the date that it came in was April 15th. I saw the date.
Yep.
When was it, when did we reach out to Siemens and ask them for this?
When the ESSER grants came out. The
Why-
ESSER 2 the
why-
ESSER 2 grant came out.
Why wouldn't we have brought to the board a proposal to go RFP for this, for multiple bids?
Because it's under 250,000. And it's also a timing issue where if we don't do it now, we're actually going to have to wait until next year.
Well,
It's under 250,000, but it's also $249,585. So it's,
Which is under 250,000.
exactly. Well,
$400.
I'm definitely not in favor of approving this. I do not like their markup schedule, as I made clearly in some of the other stuff. And I would not approve this because I don't feel they're competitive enough, and I'm not even sure if the scope of work is right. The scope of work is what they proposed, and I don't know if that's the best answer. You know, we've got one thing, and we want to do $250,000 worth of work.
Well, the reason why it's $250,000 too is because we have to use prevailing wages.
Right,
That's another reason.
Davis-Bacon wages, government mandated
Right, which
wages.
adds a great deal to the cost. Secondly,
Right.
this isn't lighting at all. This is totally different from lighting.
No, I'm not referring to lighting. I'm referring to the general quoting of how they handle their services to us, the multiple layers of markup of subcontractors and contractors, that in anything else that they propose to, that looked at, is 33 to 35% markup with their profit margin. That's how they quote the work. So I look at this, and without any supporting documents, I go, okay, so the going price for this is, on the street, is potentially 30% less.
Well, there is supporting document, there's a quote in here.
I looked at it, I looked at the
There's
proposal.
supporting documentation in there.
Right, I mean, as far as, okay, you know, digging into, I mean, I did read their proposal, you know, is the different things, but, you know, you could potentially go out in a competitive bid situation, somebody else could say, we're gonna do it differently, we're gonna do all mini splits instead of roof-mounted condenser coils that have to be craned onto the building, and you could have a totally different cost result and meet the same goal.
But it also won't work with our system that you've upgraded. The DeSigo software is what you've okayed to put in there, and it's not going to work with every system that's out there.
Then we better not buy it because the assurance that we got is that it would work with any other system.
I don't think it was in every system.
But the fact is, that is a monitoring system, and if we needed to have a portion to tie it in with another contractor, that's reasonable. But just because we have a Siemens monitoring system doesn't mean that we're gonna buy everything from them, because if that's the answer, then I'd be looking for a bid to change a building monitoring system, because that is just the the structure that we're using currently as a building monitoring system. That does not require that we do all our building upgrades through Siemens.
No, but I'll be honest with you, I know you don't have much love for Siemens, but,
I don't like the way they quote.
okay, but I've used them before.
Yeah.
For over 10 years in Oyster River, and we've had
Yeah.
excellent service from them.
Well, I'm not saying their service is good.
Multiple other issues going on here, too, not only just the
Yeah.
quality of air. I mean, we're in those offices
Yeah.
more than any employee in this district.
Yeah.
Okay, the front office people and the SAU offices are in there more than any other employee in this district. We've
Yeah.
had issues with air quality in there. We have issues with temperatures in the,
Okay.
I had to close my door for a meeting, and I dropped 30 degrees in the matter of half an hour.
Right?
It also gets hotter at 30 degrees.
So if these situations existed, why wouldn't it have been before the board at an earlier time to say, this is what we'd like to do, and this is how we would like to proceed?
Because this is when I collected the information. I mean, I couldn't have done it before I got here. I haven't been here that long. So the other issue too is that every office in this district, with the exception of Henry Wilson, has air conditioning and air circulation going through that office.
Yeah.
We don't. We also have air conditioning units in there that are a security risk for this building. It's just a piece of plywood that's in a place of a window. So I'm trying to do multiple things at once with one fell swoop and trying to get it done as quickly as possible so we can get on a future path. I also have plans that I'm trying to put together for the other buildings that are much, much bigger and obviously will go out to bid. So there are multiple things in play here.
Go ahead, Tim.
We've got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with about $5.7 million coming into this district that we can do a lot of good with. This board has waived its bidding policy, waived its purchasing policies to get the emergency, we have to do this right now, things up and running. We have time. In fact, we have 3 years. I want to see a budget of our entire scope of spending, and I'm pretty sure, unless it's an emergency, I'm going to stay with a district policy of $5,000, over $5,000 we go out to bid.
There is a budget in here with all our ESSER funding.
It's not our budget.
No. It's a start.
It's-
I mean, I did look
Well,
at it.
I develop the budgets for the district, so it is our budget. It's the district's budget. Okay, I understand you want control over it, but I have to develop something for you to look at before you
Right.
can actually go look at it.
No, I looked at it, and it's got some content in there that I'm sure the board would want to discuss. And,
It's not the board's adopted budget. And I think that's the distinction that you were making.
yeah, I mean, this is currently the first, I look at it as the first kind of rough allocation of where the money could be spent. That's the way I looked at it. But getting back to the proposal, I've said my piece, so I've got nothing else to say. So what's the other board's members, they want to proceed with it, waive the bidding policy, or? Josh?
I'd like to go along with our policy,
Which would mean what?
not waive the bidding policy, put it up to bid.
Well, okay.
What's
Mary?
the, go ahead.
Tim?
We've got 3 buildings with furnaces that are going to need replacement within the next couple of years. You know, how do we look at that big picture? Look where the money's going to go, where our best investment is, and do the overall budget. I'm not opposed to HVAC. If we can afford it, I think it's great, but I think we'd be silly to put HVAC in if 3 of our buildings need new furnaces, and that's going to be the make it or break it. And when I'm talking about budget, I'm looking at the budget, didn't spend a lot of time in it today, but I'm not seeing summer school in here, I'm not seeing after-school care in here, I'm not seeing the learning loss in here, and maybe we need a workshop to sit down and,
The stuff from learning loss is in the red, right in the middle, under ESSER 3. All the stuff you requested is in there.
There is not a
multiple
summer
years.
school budget in there. But the other positions
I mean,
that we
right now,
discussed-
this is just a guesstimation. We still have over $1.5 million left
but I don't want to guess. I want to plan.
So while we were talking on the positions, I just had a question. Looking at these numbers, this is the only question I got. This total, I'll take the math, intervention, FHS, 170.
That's for 2 years.
2 years, how many people?
One.
So the cost for that position,
That would include
Good benefits, retirement, FICA,
that's everything.
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 Soup to nuts.
So I guess for subsequent information, I'd like to see those broken out to salary and what the other benefits are. Not in anytime soon, but just when you look at that number, what does that comprise? Is that based upon an $80,000 salary? And this is the rest of the FICA, Medicaid, Medicare, and benefits component of that. That's the only question I see to that. What's the makeup of that? But that's the only thing I see for that. But Tim brought up a good question. Based upon the SR 2 and 3 funding, is upgrading one of our boilers, would that qualify?
No.
no.
So,
If it's the ducts, the heating, the air quality in
Yeah.
conducting that, yes. The boiler itself, no.
so in essence, if the complete system was totally redesigned to include the heating is through ventilation and AC is through ventilation, then it would be covered.
It might not do the boiler, it would probably do the rest of it. So it would have to be kind of partially, if the district bought the boiler, Esther might do the rest.
So, I mean, that's one question I have is, because say we look at some of our heating systems, we've got ventilation that goes with it, and, does it make sense to have a proposal for that, or does it make sense to do the AC on top of the current heating systems that we have, which are forced hot water primarily, right?
For the most part.
Not in the newer buildings.
It's a boiler at Henry Wilson.
Right.
There are boilers here, but there's also
Yeah, we can, the intent was when we look at HVAC for Valley View and the high school, was to see what it would cost to add air conditioning to it. So we could have year-round use of the buildings for summer programs or what have you. So that was the intent. Right now, Henry Wilson was the one that was the squeaky wheel getting the grease because temperature control has been
Right.
difficult. I mean, in the wintertime, we have assistant principals using an air conditioner to keep herself cold in the winter.
Yeah, there's certainly issues there, I'm not disputing that. Another question on the SR2 funding, you have the windows at Henry Wilson. I assume that's the front facade?
Well, front facade and any other windows around the building that need to be replaced,
So how would that qualify into that grant?
because they've actually said windows.
windows
doors.
because it speaks to the air exchange and the air quality in the building. Being able to, is it drafty? Is it open? Is it not? Is it too sealed up? Windows are specifically included under the ESSER. There are some of the pieces you
Now,
got.
they included under SR2 and SR3?
ESSER 2 they are. I would need to go back and reread 3.
ESSER 3 is pretty similar. They just have certain requirements, like the certain amount goes to academics, certain amount goes to special ed, things
They've
like
put
that.
more buckets in 3.
Right.
And there is a comparison list in your folder.
So I am jumping around, so I forgive you there. Now, on SR2, you had air purifiers at 200,000. Was there some information in one with that? I know there's some stuff that you gave us earlier. Was that the same stuff? No.
I don't think so. I have two companies that I've spoken to about purifiers just to get a sense of what we need, but I haven't put together a proposal.
But typically, if we don't have AC or heating through ducts in most of the building, how, those are going to be room by room?
Yes. Depending on the size of the room, you either get one average sized one or two smaller ones, depending how big the room is. They've actually gone to each room. They didn't go to the room. We actually gave them the schematics to print out the blueprint of the.
And those are mounted where? ceiling?
They are movable.
freestanding.
They're freestanding.
They're on wheels.
Little R2D2 units.
They're very quiet too, actually.
Surprisingly so. I was expecting that it was going to be kind of another white noise machine, and they're relatively quiet.
Do you remember the decibel?
21, 23, I think.
That's quiet. So I guess getting back to the discussion on HVAC for Henry Wilson that they're proposing. Mary, did you finish up, Tim?
I'm going to make a motion to table it.
Second.
Okay.
I think we're crazy to spend $250,000 without planning a budget.
Did you have something you wanted to say?
Discussion, Mary and Joel?
For input, I think one of my concern is that I don't want to patchwork this. It's something we're going to do in Henry Wilson right now, and then 6 months from now, we're going to do something somewhere else. I envision that we look at the improvements that the ESSER funding will cover on our behalf and look at doing a unified thing. I don't want to go Siemens here and then we put it out to bid and somebody else is somewhere else. I just feel like we're hopscotching, so to speak. Can we put the whole bundle together? This is what ESSER funding is going to cover. This is what it has to do with air quality, heating, and HVAC. And put that packet.
Part of the ESSER funding is they actually want you to use multiple vendors. Because this really isn't an educational funding.
Yeah.
This really is it's an economics thing at this point. It's really what it is.
Now, the Henry Wilson, what's the rest of the building? It's not AC, right?
No, it's forced out air.
So you're working up your draft budget, you have HVAC, Valley View, and Henry Wilson. I assume based upon that that's for the entire building.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't we in Henry Wilson be potentially looking for bids for the entire building and also address the deficiencies in SAU and office space at the same time?
We are looking at that, but they wouldn't all connect from where they are. Because they're used completely separately from the rest
Well,
of the
not
building.
necessarily connect far as integral, but far as doing that doing it
Doing it as a single project?
Project, but depending on the system, on the AC, in their proposal, they had a combination of mini splits, roof-mounted condensers, and I don't know if they had any ground-mounted condensers. And if doing that, would that make sense to potentially do the entire building in a RFP addressing these deficiencies and the entire building? Because along with the door replacement was in all the buildings?
Those are just in a couple of buildings.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, I do remember. I'm going to get back to that. So, but yeah, we do have a motion on the floor. But Joel, any thoughts on the motion?
On the motion?
Or the
The
motion is
motion's
the
the
table?
table.
No, I mean,
Okay, not hearing any discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Joel?
I said aye.
Oh, okay.
No, with that,
Go ahead.
can we plan a workshop that we look at, our nights are busy. This is an area that really needs a lot of thought. Can we plan a workshop where we look at ESA 2, ESA 3 primarily, what the allowable expenditures are, and then map out, similar to this, a rough budget. But and again, I understand the rough numbers, but I'm looking at a budget where our summer school program isn't in here, our after-school program isn't in here. Those are areas that I think as a board we need to direct that focus and then work in the building repairs, the heating and ventilation and stuff over and above. But as I vote, my vote's going to be for learning loss and enhancements in education. And I want to make sure those dollars are accounted for so that we can do those programs that I think we desperately need. And I think the only way we're going to tackle that is a workshop where SAU team will take recommendations from our building principals, our staff, and we put something to paper so that in 2.5 years from now, we're not saying, darn, I wish I had some of that money left, because this would have been a perfect project to pay for it. I want a plan.
I certainly don't disagree with that. On your spreadsheet, worksheet, Brian, I got another couple questions. Under your ESSER 1 funding,
Yep.
you show what's spent and what's to be transferred in the balance. So your balance is 149.9.
Yep.
Is that stuff that we have earmarked, it's just not in there, or is...
The stuff to be transferred in is stuff that's in other lines in Fund 10 right now that have to be moved over.
And then remember too, we had it pretty much earmarked and spent down, and then they gave us the SBSRF. And so we had to take from that to
That was
spend
the
there because
additional...
We had to spend by December 30th.
had to be done by December.
So that's why you're seeing the numbers are around, what SPSRF spent is around the balance of what's left in ESSER 1, because we had to steal money from ESSER 1 to cover the SPSRF, because that was
Well,
time sensitive.
We stole the projects from
Right.
ESSER 1 to put toward the other monies.
Right.
So I guess looking at this, if we, just from my thoughts, looking back, if we've got a balance, so when we have a balance of 150,000, that we have no projects slated, we're going across that?
No,
No, we do.
it doesn't
We got
mean that we don't
laptops,
have
we got all
projects
stuff.
slated. And some of those, there are some other pieces that are in projects. For instance, we've not gotten all of the pop-up tents yet. We're in the
Okay,
process of it.
so is that 150 all allocated for in projects, and that's basically what we considered potentially spent?
It is potentially spent, but we're going to go back and relook because some of those pieces have been moved now that were approved activities in ESSER 1, but were pulled over for SPSRF. So I need to rewrite those activities now. I can put into ESSER 1 some of the summer school pieces. I can put into, and I need to spend that down first.
Right.
And so I guess what I'm looking for perhaps from you then is if you're looking at doing a workshop and you want this presented, are we looking at the 3rd? Are we looking at the 10th when we come back so that we've got a target date to make sure we have these?
So how long is it going to take you to readdress this ESSER 1 as far as those items which you said you're going to get pulled over and itemized? When would you have that done?
Be at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think it'll be,
'cause
I mean,
between-
2 weeks is the 3rd, and that's with a vacation week in between without having
Yeah, I got training and
Because
everything.
full access and
I
you're
kind
training most of the
I kind
time.
of see that needs to kind of get done.
Right.
So that you can say, okay, that there's $32,000
Yeah, I
left
mean,
in there.
we
Or
are,
Well, like
we've
the
talked about
RFP,
it with
the
pieces.
pre-bid I put in for the laptops,
Yeah,
that goes into ESSER 1, and whatever above and beyond gets rolled into ESSER 2. So I didn't put the laptop because I don't have the RFP's almost done,
yeah.
but I also don't have an idea what it's going to end up coming back at. So
And
if it's
that-
$80,000 or $90,000 or more, which I believe it is, I believe originally it was.
Yes.
That's pretty much going to take care of ESSER 1. And that'll be done, because we have until September 30th to spend that down. Then
So-
each one goes out an extra year. ESSER 2 goes out the next year, ESSER 3 goes out 2 years.
So
Okay.
with that, looking at the 10th to say, we're going to lay everything out for you?
I would say the sooner the better. If that's the day that you're saying you'd be ready, that will be the date. I don't want to say, make it a date you guys aren't going to be ready for it.
Right.
Now, I'd like to go to ESSER 2. There's a couple things I just want to go through this list. 2 buses we purchased.
Yep.
The bus radios, we've authorized the purchase.
You did, and there will be a slight adjustment to
Yeah,
that
that's fine.
with the, but.
The portable radios, that's been authorized?
Yes,
Okay. The tent for the proms, the duct cleaning was authorized?
Yep.
Control system, that was authorized?
Yeah, that was the one, remember
Okay.
at the town meeting, at deliberative session, you brought it down to $1. We were gonna put money into an account to pay for it.
No, that was out of
That was, right, but
the
it was-
control system was authorized earlier this year out of the trust fund.
right, but we were gonna replace the money in the trust fund, but because we got the grant
Right.
funding, we brought it down to
But that
$1.
was the one to bring that,
To bring Henry Wilson up to spec so that we could. so
right,
that
as far as the
Lincoln
monitoring
City would-
system and the
Correct.
pieces, okay.
So
Yep.
instead of pulling from the trust account, we'd be
Right.
paying for it in these.
So
Yeah.
in this list, the only thing that hasn't been authorized by the board is door replacements, air purifiers, and the generator is still an estimate until we get
Yeah,
Correct.
right.
for a formal quote.
And the HVAC.
Oh, and HVAC, right, HVAC. So of that,
On that one, on that particular grant, yes.
On that,
Yes.
on ESER two.
so of that, say if everything was done, and the total remaining is 812,000, what was, and some of these things aren't in there, such as regarding the learning loss.
Well,
Or-
some of that is in three, and the reason why we put it over to three is because three has a threshold where 20% of that has to be spent for academics. You can spend more than that, but 20% must be directly toward academics. And so, as Brian was looking at it, he put those positions into three as opposed to two or one, because three requires that amount to be spent. It can go in one of the others, and we will have some other things that could certainly go to, but these are higher ticket items
Right.
that it made sense to put there. We will have summer programming is certainly academic. And we have some of that budgeted in the regular budget that will still need to be spent. We can't supplant. But you've authorized additional expenditures over and above. We've got transportation, we've got increase in salaries. Those would come out of the grant.
Right. And those are allowed, the bonuses or
Well,
your prevailing wage, I guess you would call it,
Yes, prevailing wage
District
for
prevailing
the
wage
summer program
would be-
is allowed.
above and beyond what's budgeted.
Correct.
So of that balance, that 812,
How much of that would be summer?
no, I mean, how much of that do you think that is stuff that is potentially earmarked of that 812? Most of it, some of it, half of it?
Not much more, I mean, maybe 100,000?
Okay, so if that, so say
So
that's
we've got plenty of money left, huh?
700. How are we going to spend those funds down in ESER 2? Saying we're ESER, so I'm looking here, how are we going to wisely spend those monies down?
So part of the other pieces that we were looking at long-term is, you've got the estimates there for the HVAC for Valley View, Henry Wilson. If you're going to do the whole build, for the high school, if you're going to do all of Henry Wilson, that ups it considerably. And
Oh,
that
yeah,
may
it
be
does,
your
yeah.
other balanced chunks.
That's gonna be your more expensive of the three buildings.
Because Henry Wilson is going to require more retrofit because you've got pieces built on pieces that sort of talk to each other, but not really. So that may be a good chunk of your balance if that were where you were going. And again, I know you're looking to see the big plan, so.
And when is the funding have to be spent, be used in ESER 2?
ESER 2 is September 30th of 2022. ESER 3 is September 30th of 2023.
But if we're looking at getting long-range projects put together, we also need to move relatively quickly to make sure that we can get those on somebody's schedule, because there's only so many folks who do the work.
Yep, well,
And I know you understand that part.
I understand that. It's how it's best to start in the right direction. Anyone else with any questions or discussion, I guess probably regarding ESER funds, which is what I was discussing.
Can I ask you just,
Go ahead.
when you talked about the other buildings having some air conditioning, you're just talking about
The
the main
offices.
office area?
The offices,
Right.
correct.
And was there when you talk about air conditioning, were you looking at just the main office areas? You weren't, okay. When you said programming, I wasn't sure if you were talking about extending it to other areas
Just
within the
front
building.
office, SAU.
That was in the estimate here, but in ESER 3, where you have $1 million per building, that's for the entire building.
Correct.
Any other discussion on that topic? Okay, not hearing any other new business?
I have a motion. I'd like to motion that effective June 30th, Farmington School District will be in person without restrictions.
As far as restrictions, as far as COVID restrictions?
COVID restrictions per the reopening plan.
We have a motion, is there a second?
A second.
Second for discussion. So, you said July,
June 30.
June 30th, which is the end of our fiscal year,
It's
right?
at the end of the fiscal year, so.
So I guess the question, Ruth Ellen, if that's the motion on the table or to pass, are we able to, what would be the implications?
Implications would be looking at summer school then with no restrictions in person.
Right. But
We will have the possibility of some vaccines available for students. As far as if there's an availability announced at the end of May like they're talking about, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is in arms by the end of June. It might. If we are looking at taking away distancing and masks, today the DOE said, we still strongly recommend that you keep your mask restrictions in place, at least this year. And I know you're not talking about taking it away now. You're talking about in June. I think you revisit it again coming up, but our numbers locally are going up again. I don't know what June's going to look like. That's another 2.5 months away.
Right.
Now, but in our summer program, I think we said we had like 15 teachers?
Potentially, yes.
15 teachers plus students,
But
so,
remember that I'm having to also combine into one building for it. So I'll have up there, I'll have Henry Wilson and high school both here, spread across. And I think it's going to end up being it'll be more than 15 staff. I'll have
Right.
teachers, but I'll have 5 or 6 teachers for the high school, probably the same for Henry Wilson, and probably another 7. So it may be closer to 20 by the time we get.
What's the chance of running a clinic like Rochester and Oyster River did over the weekend here for our kids?
Our kids were included at Rochester and Oyster River.
Okay.
And basically, right now, they've said, not going to happen. They couldn't give away the vaccine down there because people didn't show up. And I'm like, well, it's a distance for our kids. I
Well, it
could
was-
certainly try again.
Yeah, it was pretty last minute.
It was.
I took my 2 kids this morning, so I mean, the availability of the vaccine for anybody 16 and over is out there. I think by September, we're looking at all our staff that want to be vaccinated have had the opportunity. Hopefully by then, some of our younger kids will have an approved process. I think in summer school, if we're talking about an outdoor environment, not a lot of students, do we have the 6 feet socially distanced? I'd like to start planning for reality, and like you said, similar to what we talked about when we were reopening before, let's set a target, and let's set a review date. If we have to review it at June 1st, or May 15th, or, whatever, to make sure we're still on track, that's 2 months away. But I'd like to look at that light at the end of the tunnel, with the caveat that if any student or staff member wants to wear their mask, they're welcome to voluntarily wear it.
We're looking at a start date of July 12th. So whether we look at a month out to say, this is what we're seeing, or you wanted to go 6 weeks, that would be June 1.
What do you need for planning? You know, I mean, I guess if we don't change anything, there's not much planning, but
I
whatever we set that date for, I want it to be a date that you're comfortable with.
I think if you're looking at relaxing restrictions as opposed to imposing them, relaxing takes less planning than imposing does. Because imposing, we had to order shields, we had to get things in place, we had to do a lot of measuring. If it's going back to normal, and I'm using air quotes because nobody knows what that looks like anymore, that's easier. I don't think it takes as much other than time maybe for people to have it sink in and process. And that's sometimes harder to quantify.
Well, I mean, the governor did lift his mask mandate, I think, last Friday.
Well, it expired,
It expired, he didn't renew it.
right?
You know,
We had restrictions in place
Right.
prior.
and we have restrictions now. I mean, that's the reason I'm wearing this mask. That's the only reason I'm wearing this mask, is to be consistent with what people are held to. But outside of here, I don't wear a mask. My life is going back to normal, and everybody that's in the high-risk group has had an opportunity to be vaccinated. Everybody now 18 and older, is it 16? 60 have an opportunity to be vaccinated. Those who may not choose to be vaccinated, that's their choice. Now, I do have I got a question, but after this motion. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Joe.
Didn't Diana say something, was it last week, about what would that look like for special needs students over the summer with underlying conditions? Would it still be accommodations for that?
I think we have to make accommodations for that. You know, we have students with health restrictions that we can't tell them they can't have access. And so I think that if we were to go to no restrictions, so we have someone who truly has a health restriction, we would have to figure out what that looks like for that student.
Yeah,
And that's something that, I mean, 'tis the season right now for looking at IEPs.
Yep.
I'm sure that a lot of them are up for 3-year, evals that could be written in to their IEP.
Yep.
So those kids would, essentially, a kid, I guess what I'm asking is, despite the motion, a child with an underlying condition that needs summer school could be accommodated as such.
I think
It'd
they would
have to be-
they would
it'd have
have
to
to
be
be
by
under the
law.
law.
Have to be.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be any different than,
No,
No, and so if the parent says,
but when you're listening at home,
right,
you could potentially go, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, what do we do?
Just trying to,
if a parent says that we're fine with it being, done differently, that's when these parents says, I want my kid in, but my kid can't be in without this, then we've got some things to figure out for that individual. And that is one thing
but
that.
it's not about wanting, it's about the need.
It's about needing,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
But it's about wanting the in-person instruction
Yeah,
and what the student needs are.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
developed at a team level. It's not,
Yes, it is.
it's not one
It's-
person
It's
dictating
not
to
one
us what it
person
looks
saying,
like. Yeah.
I will. No.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
aye,
Okay, unanimous.
but we are going, are we going,
Did we set a review date for the
thank you.
record?
Did you have a proposed date, Ruth Ellen?
Well, Tim had mentioned June 1 or, 2 weeks later would give us a month before summer school starts. I don't even know what the dates are. Hold on, let me look at June. So we have a board meeting on the 7th, potentially the 14th, the 21st.
I'll make a
So-
motion to review the data regarding COVID and our ability to be without restrictions through summer school on the 7th of June.
I'll second, but could we include in that how many cases have been traced back to Farmington School District schools?
So, yes, understand that some of that I have who's been positive. I can't always say exactly where they got it.
Right, if they got it here, that's what I'm saying. If
Okay.
it's been determined that they
Got
got
it in the
the
workplace?
virus
Or the school?
here,
Okay,
student or staff.
okay. That's more problematic because it doesn't always come to me that way, but I will do what I can.
Thank you.
You might want to have two sets of numbers, or two numbers, the number of people that have been infected and the people that we believe got it here. Because that may tell a better picture. I don't know what the difference of those numbers will be, but it could be, I don't even know what they would be. I mean, you might say it's been, what do you think that first number would be of people that came to the school or worked at this, came to school either by student or an employee has contacted COVID? Do you think it's 200?
I'm not speculating. I'd have to go back and look at I've got a notebook. I've
Yeah.
got
No, I
everything
don't
back
know.
to
I just-
September, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to just throw out a number.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Not hearing any? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so June 7th will be the review date of our ability to continue with that date. Any other thing for old business?
Good, new business.
You have something new business?
I just want to make the board aware that next Wednesday I won't be at the Budget Committee meeting. I've already spoken to Mrs. Barron, and she's the alternate. She'll be taking my place.
Oh, Mary.
Yeah, dear. I can sit in the audience just as well as the rest of them and cheer you two on. Yeah. If there's anything that you need, that you feel that I should have beforehand, just drop me a note. I can pick it up or you can send it to me.
And as far as I know, I will be available, but I will let you know if that changes. I've got a couple of things that are still up in the air, but I will do my best.
So it could be Brian and,
Hey,
where are you going?
I'm here all the time.
I
It's
think
raining all week.
we'll be fine.
I'll be the one sweating in my office. It's okay.
I get you, fan. I get you one of those operator when you...
Actually, I do have a fan by the air conditioner. That's all.
Plenty of cold water in the gym showers.
Yeah, we have public participation. Do we have anybody that's online that would like to communicate to
No,
the
we
board?
have two people on, and neither indicated they would like to participate in the chat.
Okay, so the other thing on our agenda is some manifest signing. We have a couple non-publics. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending and make a motion to go into non-public session under RSA 91A:3, 2, A, B, and C, nominations and resignations.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Ken?